The depth gauge needle is past where it's supposed to stop. You've been watching it for 11 seconds. You know it's 11 because you counted. Counting is the only thing your hands can do right now that isn't shaking, and your hands cannot shake, because your hands are the only hands in this compartment that know how to reach the emergency ballast valve. And if you don't reach it in the next 90 seconds, the question of your hands shaking will stop being relevant to anyone. The hull groans. Not a creak, not a settling sound, a groan, low and sustained. The sound of 300 tons of steel being asked to hold a shape it was never meant to hold at this depth. You've been on boats for 4 years. You know the difference between the sounds a hull makes when it's working, and the sounds it makes when it's failing. This is the second kind. If that sound already lives somewhere in your chest before you've read another word, then stay with it. That's exactly where this story is. The water came in through the aft ballast compartment 11 minutes ago when the first depth charge went wide but not wide enough. A crack in the pressure hull, maybe 30 centimeters, running diagonally from the port weld seam. Chief Hadley got a hand on the emergency seal plate before the second charge hit. The second charge hit closer. Hadley is gone. The seal plate is gone. The crack is now approximately twice what it was, and the water is at your knees and it is cold in a way that makes the cold of the North Atlantic surface feel like a warm room. You feel the temperature, and the weight, and the pressure in your legs, and your legs are already going numb, and you'll deal with that in approximately 4 minutes or not at all. The lights flicker. Not all of them. The main circuit went with the second charge. What you have left is the emergency strip along the port bulkhead, dim orange strips that turn every face in the compartment the color of something burning slowly. There are 7 men in this compartment with you. You can see their faces. You wish you couldn't. McAllister is at the aft hatch, both hands braced against it, his weight holding it shut against the pressure from the flooding compartment behind it. He's been holding it for 8 minutes. His face is the face of a man doing mathematics he doesn't want to finish. The equation is simple. The hatch holds or it doesn't. If it doesn't, the 7 of you are gone in under a minute, and the question of the escape hatch is answered. McAllister knows this. You can see him knowing it. Sweeney is on the floor, not sitting. His back against the torpedo housing, hands in the water rising around his waist, saying something quietly that you cannot hear, and don't need to hear, because you've seen men do this before, and you know what they're saying. And it is between them and whoever they're saying it to, and you don't have time for it anyway. You have 42 seconds left on what you decided were your 90 seconds. The emergency ballast valve is above the main control panel, a red wheel the size of a dinner plate, painted red 18 months ago in a dockyard in Greenock, by a man who had no idea what he was painting it for. You reach it. You brace your feet against the base of the panel, plant them wide because the deck is at 4 degrees now and getting steeper, and you put both hands on the wheel and you pull. It doesn't move. You have been on submarines for 4 years, and the emergency ballast valve has never not moved. The wheel is seized, pressure differential, salt corrosion, damage from the charges, any or all of these, none of which matters. Because what matters is that the wheel is not moving, and you are 30 seconds from whatever 90 seconds meant, and the water is at your thighs now, and your hands are on a red wheel that is not moving. You take a breath. This is something your father taught you without knowing he was teaching it. A man who fixed engines in a fishing port in Fife, who told you once there is always one more thing to try, and that the thing you try when you think there is nothing left is usually the thing that works. You have thought about that sentence approximately once every 2 months since he said it. This is one of those times. You brace differently. Both feet higher. Body angle changed. You use your shoulders instead of your arms and you don't pull. You use the full torque of your upper body in a slow rotation. And there is a resistance. And then a resistance within the resistance. And then a sound that is not the groan of the hull but a different sound. A mechanical sound. The specific sound of something that was seized becoming unseized. And the wheel moves 1 centimeter. And then 5. And then a full turn. The ballast tanks begin to purge. The boat shudders. The angle changes. 4 degrees becomes 2 degrees becomes almost level. The depth gauge needle, which has been doing something you've been deliberately not looking at, begins to move in the other direction, slowly. The way hope moves at first, so slowly you don't trust it, and then faster. McAllister is looking at you from the aft hatch. His face has changed. Not relief. Not yet. Something earlier than relief. The part that comes before you're allowed to feel relief. Sweeney has stopped talking. The water is still at your thighs. It isn't rising anymore. This is important. The difference between water at your thighs that is rising, and water at your thighs that is not rising, is the difference between a problem and a situation, and situations can be managed where problems will kill you regardless. The intercom crackles. Something from the control room. The lieutenant's voice cut into fragments by the damage to the line. What you get is enough. The boat is ascending. Controlled or close enough to control that the word applies. The aft seal is holding, or held long enough. Someone in another compartment did something you'll never know about in time for it to matter, and now the boat is going up. You stand in water that is at your thighs and you breathe. The next 40 minutes are the most specific kind of work there is. The kind where the job is granular and physical, and your mind has to stay exactly in the task, because the task is all there is. You help move men from the forward compartment who cannot move themselves. You help Sweeney, whose hands won't function because the cold has gotten into the joints, guiding them to what they need to hold. You help McAllister away from the aft hatch, which requires both of you to not discuss what his hands look like after 8 minutes braced against cold steel under pressure. The boat surfaces at 22:17. You know the time because the clock on the main panel is the only instrument that survived completely intact, which will later strike you as the kind of detail that means something or means nothing depending on how you're disposed toward meaning. The conning tower hatch opens and the North Atlantic comes in. Not water, air, cold air, wet air, air that smells of salt and diesel, and the particular sharpness of a midwinter ocean at night. And after 43 minutes of recycled air in a flooding steel tube, that smell is the most vivid sensory experience you've had since childhood. Since a morning you remember from when you were 7, standing at the end of a pier in Fife with your father, and the air smelled exactly like this. You don't think about that for long. There is too much to do. The damage assessment takes 2 hours. The crack in the pressure hull is beyond field repair. The aft ballast system is compromised. Of the 40 men aboard when the first charge hit, 31 are confirmed present and responsive. 4 are injured with varying severity, and 5 are not accounted for in any way that is going to resolve well. Hadley is one of the 5. You knew this when the seal plate went with the second charge, and you know it now in a different way. The way you know a fact once it has been confirmed as permanent. Hadley was 31. He had a wife in Portsmouth, and a daughter he talked about more than most men talk about anything. He had been on boats since he was 18, and he knew every submarine he'd served on the way a musician knows an instrument. He put his hands on the seal plate and he held it, and then the second charge hit, and after that there was nothing to hold. You've been doing this long enough to understand the arithmetic of it. That understanding doesn't make the arithmetic different. It just means you can look at it without flinching, which is not the same as it not hurting. The boat runs on the surface, damaged, listing 2 degrees starboard, toward a rendezvous 9 hours away at reduced speed. The captain puts watches on, 4 hours on, 2 off, skeleton rotation. You take the first watch without being asked, because you're able to, and some men aren't, and ability carries obligation the same as anywhere else. You stand watch on the bridge in the dark and the cold. The Atlantic moves under you in long northwest swells, slow and enormous, and the bow rises and falls with a rhythm that in different circumstances you might call peaceful. The stars are completely obscured, total overcast. The darkness of a large ocean with no light source anywhere, and in that darkness the only references are the sound of the water and the feel of the deck under your boots and the occasional glow from the instrument panel behind you coming through the open hatch. You think about the valve, the red wheel, the torque angle that found the resistance within the resistance. You think about how close the margin was, not in the abstract way of thinking about close margins, but precisely. The 11 seconds watching the gauge needle, the 90 seconds you gave yourself, the 42 remaining when you reached the valve, the moment of it not moving. You think about your father's sentence. There is always one more thing to try. He said it about an engine that wouldn't start. A marine diesel in a small port in Fife, a December morning. The tide going out and the boat needed to move, and the engine was silent and 3 attempts had failed. He said it like a fact he'd verified many times, and then he tried the 4th thing and the engine started, and they went out and came back with fish, and none of it seemed remarkable at the time. Nothing seems remarkable at the time. Everything seems remarkable later. You've learned this. A rating comes up to relieve you after 4 hours. Young, 19 or 20. His face has something in it that hasn't settled yet. The events of the evening are still moving through him and haven't found their place. They will. They take longer for some men than others, but they find somewhere, and then the man continues. That's what continuing looks like from the inside. Not resolution, just finding somewhere to put the weight. You go below. The compartment has been pumped. The floor is still wet. That specific cold iron smell of seawater inside a steel space, still present. You will be able to identify that smell for the rest of your life at any concentration because smell has the longest memory, and this one has been in your nose for 43 minutes, and it is not leaving. You sit on the bunk that is yours in the rotation, and you don't sleep immediately. You look at the overhead, which is the overhead it always is. Gray painted steel with 3 rivets in a triangle shape that you have looked at on many nights, because this is your bunk, and this is what you see when you lie in it. You think about Hadley's hands on the seal plate. You think about McAllister's hands on the hatch for 8 minutes. You think about your own hands on the red wheel that wouldn't move and then moved. There is a version of tonight in which the wheel didn't move. You know this the way you know the depth. The gauge needle passed on its way down, a number that exists as fact and as feeling simultaneously. In that version, the water kept rising, and McAllister's equation finished its mathematics, and 7 men in a compartment at the bottom of the North Atlantic became a number in a report someone would read and mark and file. That would be the shape your life made in the world. This is not that version. You're aware the only reason it isn't is a valve, a torque angle, a sentence your father said about an engine. The margin is always that thin. You close your eyes. In 4 hours, you'll be back on watch. In 9 hours, there will be a rendezvous and a decision about what can be repaired and what can't, and where this boat goes next. In some number of days, there will be a dock and a report, and the specific administrative process that happens when 5 men are not accounted for. The daughter in Portsmouth. The wife. You think about the sea above you. 9 hours of ocean between here and anywhere that matters. The boat moving through it, damaged and listing and going anyway, because going is what boats do. And stopping in the North Atlantic in winter is not an option that the ocean offers. One more thing to try. You sleep. The gray overhead with its 3 rivets is the last thing you see. In the morning it will be the first.